Good evening and welcome to our joint board meeting of the Scott County Board and the Shakopee School District Board. We're going to convene our meeting. First, the school board will convene their meeting.
Yes, I'd like to call to order the joint meeting of Shakopee Schools and Scott County Board of Commissioners for January 26th at 6 p.m.
And we'll do the same and convene our Scott County Board of Commissioners for January 26, 2026. We're going to arise now for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to do introductions this way. We'll start at the far end over here and just come this way and say your name and who you represent.
Joe Aldridge, Shakopee School Board.
Caroline Valdez, Shakopee School Board.
Jeff Smith, Shakopee School Board.
Christy Peterson, Shakopee School Board.
John, John O'Rourke, Scott County Commissioner.
Tim Brophy, Shakopee School Board.
Jody Brennan, Scott County Commissioner. I don't know where I am.
Nick Ziddick, Shakopee School Board.
Chad Johnson, Shakopee School Board.
Dave Beer, Scott County Commissioner.
Brian Fan, Shakopee School Board.
Come back to me, Barb Weckman-Brecky, Scott County Commissioner.
Tom Wolf, Scott County Commissioner.
And we have a couple administrators out in the audience. Normally they would be sitting up here, but we're full, so where are our administrators? Okay, they're out there. Okay, well, item 4 is your item.
All right, I would like to entertain a motion to consider the agenda as presented for the Shakopee School Board.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Brophy and a second by Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
Item 5, we need a motion to approve the agenda for our meeting tonight by the county board.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 6, which is Saber Pride.
Yeah, tonight we are going to be featuring Saber Pride and a lot of student activity over the past few weeks. And up at our podium, we have Tiffany Olson, our Director of Strategic Communications Partnership. I'm sure that I have that whole title wrong, and our Student School Board Representative, Ryan Pham.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Peterson, Commissioners, everyone here today. We also have Superintendent Redmond that is sitting over here and Assistant Superintendent McClelsh just representing Shakopee Public Schools, so appreciate everyone here. If you're not familiar with Saber Pride, this is an opportunity at every school board meeting, whether it's a work session or a meeting, to just share a little bit about either student projects or partnerships, things going on in the community that truly represent what we have for our mission, vision, and values. And today it worked out great because we're talking about something that's a statewide effort, and it's the MSBA School Board Conference. And we are lucky enough to have Chair Peterson not only serve as the chair on our board and bunch of other things in your spare time, but she also serves as the president for Minnesota School Board Association. And just the impact and what needs to be done to support our students is the main focus of this conference. And Brian was able to attend that. We were among 1,500 peers in the state, including educational leaders and board members from cities served by Scott County. And we had the pleasure of not only having the majority of our board present, but in addition to Brian, we had 2 additional student members that actually served on the panel. So peers that are in seats just like you from a board perspective. We're listening to student voice on the impact of student learning, flexible learning spaces, and things that need to be done to support our students. And Chair Peterson, I know a lot more goes into the conference, and I'm certainly not trying to have a commercial for it by any means, but it is a really important discussion that impacts our counties, our cities, our districts. Is there anything you'd like to add before Brian shares some of his great insight?
I'll just say that this is one time a year that all school board members and administrators from across the state come together. A lot of learning opportunities, educational sessions, to really get a sneak peek into what's going on at other school districts across the state of Minnesota. It's also another opportunity for leaders across the state to come together and connect with one another. And that was really a focus at our conference this year, was we gave people a lot more opportunity to make those connections, to network, which was really, really important this year, considering the times that we were in during the leadership conference a couple of weeks ago. And we just really stressed the need to make that connection with another board member, whether it was from a neighboring district or somewhere else across the state that you can lean in on and talk to, just to have another ear to listen to, somebody else that's sitting at the board table just like us that understands what we're all going through. Because regardless of what size your district is, big or small, whatever corner of the state that you're from, we're all there for one main purpose, and that's to help our students be successful and prepare them for their futures. And I think that being able to connect with one another and to support one another through the challenging times that our public schools are facing right now was just very critical for this year's conference.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. You'll see a couple photos on there. Brian's in action in one of those photos, and we're gonna get a little more detail on that. And you also see, if you're going from left to right, we have Javier and Henri, two seniors with us from Shakopee High School and the Academies of Shakopee. And we were third year exhibiting at the Student Excellence Showcase, where it's exactly what you think. Students are able to share their learning opportunities, what they do directly. You can see Jordan Public Schools listed on there, Eden Prairie, some of our neighbors, some that are within the county, things of that nature. But Brian is really eager to share all the great things that were discussed and just what the hot topics are.
Yeah. So, as you can see in the photos, I'm speaking to different school board members, not only just at Shakopee, but across the state of Minnesota. And it was really cool to emphasize the academies at Shakopee specifically and how that sets students up for success. I know a lot of school board members came up to me asking, how do I set my students up for success? And just speaking about how programs like the 3-tier model for electives and the CAPS program really set Shakopee students up for success, and not only put them in an environment where it's very professional, but also taught them how to dress well and be well prepared for events such as this. Not pictured, I was also involved in a student school board member panel, which was a panel of 5 students from different schools from across the metro area, and we kind of spoke to school board members on what our role was, and to school board members on how to build a role just like a student school board member, and some of the challenges that we faced as student school board members. I think it was a really honest environment, and it was really fun just being able to bounce off of my peers, not only just agreeing with them, but also adding on. And the 3 kind of main themes that we talked about was, 1, even though we're students, we still live the same lives as everyone here. We still have a voice, and we would like to be treated as such. The second part was that all of us kind of experienced a struggle with student engagement, whether if it was getting feedback on an initiative or just being able to speak to the entire student body and representing that effectively. And I think just being on the panel next to all of my peers was a really cool experience. I've never been in a room full of that many school board members at one time. Yeah. But I think it was really insightful just to see how many school board members actually had questions for us and how many were interested in building a role like the one I'm in. So,
That's
yeah.
great, Brian. Couple other quick highlights. There's a lot of business and things to talk about today, so we will not belabor it, but we have to have a little fun and savor pride, a great piece that Brian talked about. And we have our Director of Special Services, Julie Fred, here, is very familiar with the design challenge and the quick little snippets, and hopefully you can look at it in your board packets, as we like to share what some of those authentic learning experiences are. And Team Jazzy, who you can see represented in this photo here, was able to engineer and design and put together a project for for one of our students in our middle school so that she was able to better write and just not have as many obstacles when it comes to her writing and projects and things of that nature. So you have real world design, they're using actual prototypes, they're pulling sketches together, and then the end product is actually going to a peer student. So I'd encourage you to check out a WCCO special on that. From a county perspective, we were the first public school district in the state to sign a school board resolution to join the Green Step Schools program. As you know, the city of Shakopee is also part of Green Step. That's thanks to many folks that you'll see listed here, whether it's an alumni, which is a student, or a student-run club, the Sun Club, and also an educator and well-known in the city here, Ed Loisel. But just, again, kind of strengthening that partnership between city, school district, and obviously that boils up to the county. So that was something that was great to celebrate there. And then last is the one of two in the state. The county, you know, we are able to have a school district that's only one of two in the entire state with the Academies of Shakopee model, and we actually spoke on that in the design process. And by we, I mean our students. You'll see those wonderful members I mentioned there, and Chair Peterson, and also our lead architect and engineering firm, Wold, was present for that as well. So Brian and I could go on for hours about all of this. We certainly will not, but the Sabre Pride takeaway is just that connection between boards, city, county, public districts, students, voice, and really all the above. And there was a lot of good things going on in Minneapolis during that time.
Thank you. That's very good. We're on to item 7.1, which is to receive information on Scott County Delivers topic, early learning and literacy. And why don't we have each of you say who you are and who you represent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start with introductions. If you'll please say your name and where you work and what you do.
Do you want to go?
I never usually go, but sure. My name is Katie Malika, Quality Improvement with Scott County.
Jake Grusing, Transformation Enterprise Services Director, Scott County.
Jim McClousich, Assistant Superintendent, Shakopee Schools.
I'm Lori Huss, Assistant Employee Relations Director with Scott County.
And my name is Shania. I am also a student representative on the Shakopee Public Schools Board.
I'm Crystal Boyachko. I'm with the Community Prevention Response and Family Resource Centers with Scott County.
Monica Summers, Shakopee Public Schools, co-director of Learning, Teaching, and Equity E5 programs.
Hi, I'm Sarah Moline, and I am the Pearson Early Learning Administrator for Shakopee Schools.
I'm Mary Kay Stevens with Scott County Public Health. I supervise family health area.
Jennifer Schultz, Scott County Library Director.
I'm Yelena, Data Planner with Scott County Public Health.
Today's topic is early learning and literacy. This sits squarely within the Scott County objective of children, being that they're so important for our future. This topic, due to its importance, has actually come before the board multiple times before. The coordinators for this group wanted to focus on 0 to 5, noting how it's an important period of time when it connects with literacy. I would like to thank all of the coordinators for their work on this, and I would also like to especially thank our community partners for taking time out of their day to be here, and for the data that was shared from the Shakopee School District as well. So with that, Jake, I'll have you ask our first question.
Okay. Good try. I got like a prefatory remark before I get to a question. Just double down on the gratitude to Sarah, Nika, Shania, and Jim for participating in this, for sharing data on relatively short notice. We prepared the packet, and then we had some follow-up questions. We were asking, you know, are you sure you don't have this, or can you share this? When we shared our data, there was good, I think, challenging of the data that we were providing. Where did you get this data? What reports did you run? So everything they participated in made this packet better. I think they make us better as we collaborate and have these conversations. And I'll also say they're showing up with, maybe you did a ton of prep with them, but I'm guessing they showed up like, okay, we're doing a Scott County Delivers. What exactly is that? We don't have that at the Shakopee School Board meetings. And they're, I think, happily playing along with this, and will participate really well. For the school board members, if you're not familiar with Scott County Delivers, this is something we do once a month, the second county board meeting every month. We prepare a packet like this on a broad topic. It's an opportunity for staff on this side to question the subject matter experts from the county and from our partners on the other side. and really reflect on and challenge whether the residents of Scott County are getting any value for what they're paying for. Are we achieving the right outcomes for our communities? And it's okay if the data isn't great. We get to have good conversation about that. And all of you will have the opportunity to ask questions of all of us at the end of our conversation as well. And do you want them to jump in whenever they want?
Of
Or
course.
hold questions till the end? Yeah, jump in whenever you have a question. Okay. All right, now I have the first question. Might not be the last time that happens. So if we can go to page 2, Evan, there's a graphic that was put together here that I think aspires to be kind of a logic model, if you will. This is the work we're doing of the things we can measure ultimately from birth through grade 12. The goal is to have students graduating on time and moving on to college or career. Stepping down from that, and we have data on that in the packet as one of our community indicators for the high school graduation rate. Stepping down from that, early childhood screening at age 3 ideally, but in that 3 to 5 range before kids get to kindergarten. We have kindergarten readiness, and then we have 3rd grade reading as sort of sub-level key performance indicators. We have all of the programmatic supports that are pretty clearly within the early childhood, early literacy realm. And then on the bottom, those spheres really represent the other factors and not a comprehensive list of the other factors in a child's life that would impact their ability to be screened at 3, to be ready for kindergarten, to be reading at grade level by 3rd grade and graduate on time. My question is really for the district staff to start. This was put together by county people. This makes sense to us. Does this make sense to you? And regardless of what your answer is, why? If it's yes, we'd love to hear why. If no, why?
I can start. So I have had a chance to look at this before and ask some questions, and those of you around the table have said, what are we missing too? So it wasn't just a surprise. But I would say that, you know, it is a wonderful capture of the things that are happening now and the things that we keep striving for and continually wanting to have, you know, more children screened at 3 and things like that. So in my opinion, for the school district, this is including everything that is going on now and then things to continue to work on.
I would agree with that. I think it's important to have not only the supports and opportunities, but the factors that are at play, which showcase the challenges that we're all up against, but also areas for opportunity to partner and continue to try to improve those outcomes.
Thank you. Anybody, you know, it's kind of free form. We don't have to go sequentially. Anybody can ask you.
Well, first of all, Jake, thank you for this invitation. You know, participating in Scott County Delivers bucket list item for me, getting that done tonight. I have a question for our county friends. Looking at page 25, early intervention services, birth to 3 referrals. You know, we know that birth to 5 is a critical time in child development. We recognize that the more service and support we can provide students and families during that time period, the more likely the students are to be successful. When I look at this graph, I see a fairly, you know, steady trend in increase in referrals. And my question is, one, you know, being in the field, are there any specific things that you can attribute it to? And even more importantly, are there steps that we can take collaboratively through Pearson, through your programming, to help support families to mitigate these numbers and provide students and families whatever support they need so that students can come to school in the best position to learn?
I think I can speak to that. Because we have so many opportunities that we connect with families or families with young kids early on, it's inherent in our work. And we want to maximize those opportunities to make sure kids are kind of on the right trajectory We do that through many of our different program pieces. But I think, so we're very vigilant about ruling kids out, actually, that they're doing well on their way. But this is a child who might need some additional support based on their screenings. And we're not the only partner in that through public health. But some of our programs, we do a good job of early identification of kids that need that additional support, which filter into some of these referrals. We have a follow-along program that we offer to all new births, that parents can look at their development and social motion development, and if they have concerns, we can make those connections to help them get to early intervention services. Or if we're working with a family through family home visiting where developmental screening tools are required, we also help them connect to what they need if there's a concern. We receive referrals from the state health department for kids that have newborn screening, things identified on newborn screening, or learning or hearing loss from their newborn screen. So we'll make sure that they get connected. So some kids actually already are identified as qualifying or at risk under some of the categories of all of this. And so it's supporting them and making sure they're getting what they need. And the other of it is identifying kids who might be lagging a little bit, need a little additional support. And there's many examples of that in our other program, making sure kids are getting in for their well checks, through our child and teen checkups program. We've been partnering with the Shakopee and other school districts with their ECFE and jointly doing newborn groups, answering parent questions, supporting parents, all these things are promoting literacy, helping families get what they need, making sure that foundation is strong so they're coming ready to learn. As do other partners in other places through the county. So I think we're doing a good job of catching kids as you see things go up. I think there were some lags after the pandemic where kids were in different circumstances, and we're catching up and working on getting those kids supported and identified. And I think there's been a lot of good work to the second part of your question about how are we making sure that kids are getting connected and served through the district or elsewhere where needed. I know for not every child the school is the solution, but it's a medical referral or those kind of things. So we try to coordinate and facilitate those things. And just as we're talking about all the ways in the past few years we've focused on making sure that families know about the importance of the services that are out there, whether at the school or through the county or through their community, so that they're knowing kind of what to watch for and what can help. And I think there's ongoing opportunities to continue to make sure kids don't fall through the cracks and get connected.
I would also add that it's exciting that there's many choices for families. So it can be, coming to their home and doing a home visit. It can be coming in. It can be meet you at your well check visit and have that support there. And so I love to see that there are choices because it's not a one size fits all for families.
Just to add, not to be the downer in this, but when I look at that data sometimes with the referral data, I wonder if there's opportunities for us so we could, when we have kids, we make the referrals. But then what happens from there is sometimes hard to know. Did parents follow through with referrals? Did kids actually get the services? And so I often wonder, is there more that we can do between our organizations and our partners to take that next step? Because the county's really, there's services we provide too, but a lot of what we do is provide those referrals. And then we hope that next step happens. So for me, that's just an opportunity to think about as we continue this work.
I think there's also an opportunity finding those families that might be more mobile or new to the community or have other challenges, barriers that make it hard to for them to know what supports and resources are out there for them. So working together to help identify those kids and families, I think, is always an opportunity.
So Jen, I think your comments segue a little bit into one of the questions I have, which is page 13, please. So the purple bar graphs here are impressive and they just jump out. And so my question for you is, talk about the Readmobile and how it's different than other outreach efforts. Why do you think the explosion of numbers is happening through the Readmobile differently than through other programming and outreach?
Well, that's a really good question, Lori. I think a couple of things. I think the Readmobile allows us to go out to where people aren't able to come to us. So we're hitting areas where families might not have the opportunity to come, like, for example, to the library, for example. And a lot of those outreaches are repeat visits. So I think the other piece that's really powerful with that Readmobile is those families, again, the ones that maybe aren't able to come to the library, are really getting connected with our staff. They get to know our staff. There's lots of we do a lot of after-school outreach where we're catching kids getting off the bus, and we're able to do things like check out books, give them literacy materials, give them a snack. Those kids are excited to come. They know the staff, they want to have the conversations and such. So part of it is that relationship stuff we know is so important when we're connecting with kids and with families. The staff is viewed as trusted folks. And again, I think it's the opportunity to get to places where we might not otherwise get to.
It was cool to see that children screened at age 3 are significantly less likely to be at high risk in kindergarten reading assessments. However, I noticed on page 10, the main graph on page 10, it shows that Shakopee consistently has one of the lowest percentages of children screened at age 10 compared to peer districts. Do you guys know what district-specific barriers are driving this, and which are within our control as a district versus which are within the county's control?
I have something to say on this. Okay, so I do think that in Shakopee, we are very fortunate to have a rich and diverse community, and many families are navigating the American education system for the first time. So I think it highlights an opportunity for us to really partner on understanding the importance and the purpose of those early childhood screenings with our community. So really reflecting on our outreach and working together to communicate and provide access to those 3-4-year-olds to do the early childhood screenings.
Yeah, and I would also say that, yes, we are low and we are still, looking for work to really embrace what else can we do that we haven't done for that. We are moving in the right direction. I would say also that we're trying to get creative. We're on the Readmobile now doing that, screening at different places. We're going to Playworks. We're going to Saks. And trying to go out and screen and not always expect people to come to us to be screened. We're really trying to have that narrative around don't wait to be screened. There's no reason to wait because it's customized for that child's birthday. And the tool is truly for that day and time, for how old they are for that day and time. So to wait till they're 5 or going to kindergarten isn't going to change how the student performs, if you will. And so just really trying to get into communities too that might have those narratives or not know about screening yet.
This was one of the data sets that made us have a conversation. We kind of went, where are we pulling this data? Specifically, Jim had a question about this when we were running through this packet. So I'm wondering if there's anybody on this side of the table who would like to speak to slide 26 and the difference between the data that Scott County has historically pulled from the Minnesota Department of Education and the data that Shakopee Public Schools pulls for early childhood screening.
I think you're looking at me. Yes, so if you look at the graph on page 26, it is measuring the same data as the Minnesota Department of Education graph that you look at, and you will see some discrepancies. Looking at this, we have seen steady growth in 3-year-old screens since the last time these two boards convened together and set that as a priority. And if you look on the far right-hand side, we are under 20% once again for students reaching kindergarten without a screening. The reason why our data set is different, the Department of Education does random data pulls, meaning they pick a date, they pull the data, and they don't necessarily match the students in our school to who has been screened. What we had Perry Wilkinson, our data and testing guru, do was go in and literally match student to student. So we would pull a student, a 3-year-old student's name and see if they had been screened. And then we also made sure that it was in fact a 3-year-old that was still living in Shakopee. Because some of the unscreened students can be students who are mobile, who may have left our district. And so the numbers that the state has, we believe, are far less accurate than what we did, where we actually matched student names to student screenings and made sure that the students who were unscreened were actually present in Shakopee at the time of the data pull.
And I'll note that, you know, we're gonna talk about this later when we provide the update on the collaborative tactical plan. But the goal, the one very specific goal that the two boards set in October 2023 was to double the rate, the percentage of children screened at age 3. So the last data that we had prior to that meeting was the 2022-2023 data that was just a shade over 10% of the 3-year-olds being screened. And the most recent data is 26.3%, so we've more than doubled that. Just want to make sure that we note that for everybody.
In the same vein, I know if you'll go to page 29, I'm wondering, I know Yelena, you worked hard on this graphic. If you'd be able to kind of talk us through some things that you took away and some things you learned from running the data.
Sure. So just a background, this is data that I got from Shakopee Public Schools and New Prague area schools. And it looks at the, when kids are in kindergarten, they receive an assessment called early reading. And they receive it at 3 different intervals during kindergarten. And the data you can see is specifically from the fall assessment that they received. And it's specifically on reading. There are other assessments as well. But this reading assessment tests a bunch of different sub-tests, like phonics, letter names, things like that. Looking at the Shakopee Public School data, this was Ford, your data person before Perry, pulled this data for me to look at the percent of kids who were screened at age 3 and what their early reading assessment scores were, and then for age 4, and then for age 5, and then you can also see those that were not screened or on unknown screening status. So just like basic glancing at the data, you can kind of see that kids that are screened at 3 tend to have higher early reading scores or are at lower risk for being behind in their reading or what they should be at kindergarten level. And then kids who are screened later, age 5 or unknown status of screening, tend to have lower reading scores or are at higher risk for being behind in their reading. The data from New Prague somewhat suggests a similar trend. It's a little bit different. You can see those that are low risk or who are low risk for being behind in their reading at kindergarten level. It doesn't really change between screening ages, but those that test high risk for being behind at reading, it increases with screening age. So there's no I didn't do any like statistical significance testing on this, so I can't say that there is a relationship or a causation between these two, but we can kind of see that there is somewhat of a relationship between the age at which children get screened and what their early reading assessment score might be.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Is there a way for us as a school district to look at the students that have gone through the early childhood screening and may have recognized some areas of improvement that they need to have when they enter kindergarten, and look at where they are throughout the entire process, or not process, but throughout the grades in school of when we do like reading scores, math scores, to see if that early intervention helped that student be more successful throughout their elementary days. I don't know how much work that would be to pull that data, but it would be really interesting to see if there's a correlation between the students that were caught in that early childhood screening and got them help to their success versus the ones that we didn't capture in screening, and that might be having a few challenges with some of their schoolwork.
We can absolutely do that with students that attend Shakopee schools or Pearson programming, because we do track all of that. And then we would need to partner for students who are referred for early intervention services that are not attending our programs to see, if their interventions are working.
I think that would be a really important data point for us to know. I mean, we talk about the numbers doubling of what we said we were going to do. So from the last time we met in October of '23, but I think looking at those numbers as we continue to move forward would be really a good indicator as well. I mean, catching more students and screening them early is one thing, but helping them be successful as they move through their elementary years, to me, is just as impactful and would be very informative.
Can we go to page 16? I think this is library extended access door unlocks. What does this have to do with early learning and early literacy? This is a great program, and we're very proud of it, but what's the connection to this particular topic?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, for those folks maybe here that don't know what extended access is, it is in our libraries, 6 of our 7 libraries. Patrons can actually come in and use the library, whether the library is staffed or not staffed. So in some of our libraries, for example, particularly our smaller rural libraries that maybe are only staffed 24 hours a week, extended access allows the residents to be able to use the library up to 112 hours a week. So it really is kind of that anytime. I always refer to it as kind of the anytime fitness model, right? Like your staffed hours don't work for me, but I can still go in and do what I need to do, whether there's staff there or not. So residents sign up for that service. While I can't really show it in the data, what I can share with this team is the amount of comment cards and phone calls and emails that I get from parents in this case that talk about how nice it is to be able to come in and use the library, play with their children, sing with their children, read to their children at a time that works for them. Middle of the day doesn't work for all of our residents. So those are the things anecdotally that we're hearing, and why I wanted to include this information. Again, library is all about sharing resources. So, and again, in addition to getting books, they can also use public PCs and use the Wi-Fi and all of the other things that we offer at the public library. And again, it's all about the convenience for them. One of the stories that I always love to tell is that, for a lot of families that maybe have multiple kids, they're bringing their kids in for school events, they're dropping a kid off, and then they have to wait, and then they have to go back and pick them up. We hear time and time again how families then will go to the library and will use that time with their younger, smaller children to be in that space, that learning space, and using the resources that they have full access to.
If I could ask a follow-up of sorts to that, I see a lot of very positive trends in the library usage data. I also, spend a lot of time with Shakopee's comprehensive literacy framework. How are we working with Scott County Libraries and Shakopee Public Schools to align how we're working with students and families birth to 5 to further literacy, not only in the student, but in the home?
Another really good question. So, you know, some of the data that we have in here, we offer the early literacy classes in all of our branches, in many of our branches, Shakopee in particular, in one of them, multiple times a week. We're trying to offer those early literacy classes for, depending on developmental age. We know infants are different than toddlers, and toddlers are different than preschoolers. And so we are really working to also try to meet those developmental ages and to share that information so that they can take that. So early literacy, the training that we do at the library, not only is for kids to come and play, but it's also for parents to get information about the things that they can do at home. You know, the repetition and daily chore stuff and just the daily routine things. We're talking about all of those pieces so again that parents have information. Even when we count our numbers, we're talking about numbers, not only the number of children that attend, but also the parents that attend, because we know that both that has to work together. So that maybe didn't really answer your question, Jim. That's a little bit what we're doing at the library to do that. In some of our branches, we are working really closely with early childhood education, having folks from the school in the branches doing classes as well, trying to cross that back with the different the programs. At the library, we use the curriculum Every Child Ready to Read. It's a curriculum that has long been standing in the libraries, and we've used it for a number of years. There's likely some opportunities for us to talk about that and see if there's some alignment that we could do with the schools. One of the things that maybe very recently has come, our library system is a part of the regional library system. It's MELSA, so it's the Metropolitan Regional Library System, and we're currently working on a initiative about how do we foster with a focus on literacy and lifelong learning. One of the pieces that we've talked about from the library in that is the Minnesota READ Act. Now I would say that likely libraries, while we know about that, we're probably not the best to necessarily train that or talk to that. I would want to look to our school partners to see how we might be able to share that and align some of the work, because I know you guys are doing a lot of that work. So I think we have some things and some opportunities coming up where we could look at how we might share. I know in some conversations with Nika and Sarah, we talked about maybe there's some opportunities for some cross-training between our staffs in the curriculums that we're doing and the work that we're doing with those families.
Can we go to page 9? So the introduction, pages like 1 through 5, had so many things that collectively this whole group is doing, and yet the numbers here continue to decline. When you guys talk in your circles with your peers, what are your reasons for why the numbers are declining despite all of the wonderful things you're doing?
So many reasons. So I think I'm going to speak to like what we're working on now to try to impact that data. And we shared our comprehensive literacy framework because I do believe it is a comprehensive look at what we're doing. And it's going to take us time to implement all of those 6 components of our framework. Specifically, you know, working smarter, not harder, on being really targeted about the supports we're providing students. So everything from partnering, the early childhood screening, the wraparound supports we provide in programs to meet those needs, to really having aligned transitions from our early childhood to our kindergarten programs. And then, you know, we're doing a massive redesign of our core instruction for our students this year, really targeting foundational skills, which would be phonics, what people would normally call phonics, and we're doing that K-5 to get that systems alignment. And we're looking at growth within some really important sub-tests to measure that, because we know it might take some time before we see those 3rd grade results impacted. And then next year, we're doing a phase-in of a comprehensive language program, so that will be a big undertaking as well for our teachers. And again, all of these pieces kind of working together to move that third grade reading outcome. And like I said, it will take us some time to get them all in place. I think we're very excited about our winter to winter fast bridge data that we're seeing. Typically, when you implement new curriculums or programs, you do see a little bit of an implementation dip as teachers learn the resource and the practices, and then also as kids get into a new scope and sequence, there can be gaps in learning there, and we did not see that with our foundational skills. So we're maintaining, and in some grade levels, we are outperforming where we were this year, this point in time of last year. So that's encouraging, but yeah, it is definitely a lot of room for us to grow. I think it's also important that we acknowledge it's going to take some time and it's not going to be a one and done initiative. So this is a multi-year comprehensive plan that we are putting in place and looking to partner with for sure the library on.
I have a follow-up question on that. Evan, if you could take us to page 30. I think this is some of the data you might be referring to. I was wondering if you could take a moment to explain this chart, how to read it, and then kind of explain to us what your takeaways are and how you use this data to inform your work.
Sure. Okay, so page 30 is going to show our Fast Bridge early reading, kindergarten, and first grade tests. So what happens with these particular subtests, they do change a little bit in kindergarten because those predictive indicators change. So for example, in kindergarten, we measure something called concepts about print, book readiness. And that goes away, and then we start measuring letter sounds and those kinds of things. So we're pretty excited to see that growth in our kindergarten winter to winter. 10%, 11% growth, that's pretty phenomenal, again, given that it's a brand new implementation for us. And then grade 1, we're seeing some good gains there as well, again, in those very early subtests. And I think that's important because those are those kind of stair-step skills that kids need before, putting those pieces together and then taking that MCA comprehensive assessment, which is going to really rely on their ability to use all those skills and think critically and show that they're understanding what they're reading. So this is kind of that stair-step promising data that we're hoping will help us move that dial.
And then it looks
Keep
like
going.
there's a couple more pages, just those are additional grades. And
Yeah,
scores for that.
and a little bit of a different type of test. So again, we really isolate skills in K1 and measure them very closely. And then we kind of change that measurement as kids are readers. So in grades 2-5, we're just looking at their rate and the accuracy and how they phrase in a 1-minute read. That's what you're seeing here. And the auto reading is, again, subtests for grades 4 and 5 that will help us break some of those foundational skills up, vocabulary, morphology, those kind of things. And then we have our A reading, which is our generalized reading assessment that is it aligns more to the MCA, right? So you can see that there's still some movement there we're hoping to see over time.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
One of my questions was, and this is just out of curiosity, but for children who are not screened until age 5 or not screened at all, what interventions are realistically available once they enter kindergarten, and then how effective are they compared to earlier interventions?
First, I would like to say that we understand that students do move in over the summer, even right before kindergarten, right? And so we would love the opportunity to screen some of these students that are moving into our district, but we do screen that first 30 days of the kindergarten experience at schools. And so invite them in. We've added Saturday morning screenings for families as an opportunity and evening screenings as well as daytime. But once they're in kindergarten, we have them come if they can, or we might go out to the elementary and screen there. But once they're at kindergarten, I'll toss it over to you.
I think we would like to do a better job here of completing these early childhood screeners for students that have not yet done it. Because it does look at the whole child and the whole child development. And I do think sometimes when we're only looking at that narrow academic lens, we miss opportunities to program for those needs. So literacy, the ability for kids to read stands on the shoulders of other really critical milestones, like their ability to attend, their executive functioning, their social emotional learning. And so I think that early childhood screener could be a really important thing for us to do a better job of once they come to us in kindergarten if they have not yet been screened.
Nikki talked about the other, just now, like touched on the other factors at play. So Crystal, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the role of the FRC in this broader conversation, and both what you're currently doing, the work you're proud of, and also as we've gone through this process, opportunities you see on the horizon.
Yeah. Well, first, through Family Resource Centers, we're really proud to partner with everyone on this table, Shakopee Public Schools, and with the libraries and with public health and many, many more, with that goal of leveraging partnerships and also increasing access to services and supports, and thereby creating more family stability or resiliency. So, thinking about the many ways that families might learn about programs or realize that they might be eligible for something new, that can happen at any point in the family's life, right, when their children are young. And there's such great access points here. So through FRCs, we try to make sure families, one, are familiar with the great ECFE programs through Shakopee schools. So sharing out that, the registration information and making sure that they're aware of early childhood screenings and the importance of the screenings, and cross-sharing that information that comes from the state and from the schools and from public health as well. I think my philosophy is always more is more, and as we continue to build these connections as service providers, it really strengthens what's available for families too. It opens up those doors, and each family is so unique in their circumstances of what they need and what's really going to benefit them. When we're thinking of family stability, sometimes that starts and looking at the FRC resource navigation numbers, a lot of it was related to health insurance navigation. So, a family that has health care is going to their primary care provider is going to have better connections to educational services. The other part is that financial stability piece too. And some of that comes through, do you know if your family is eligible for the early learning scholarships? That opens up pathways to attending preschool programs. So I think all of this is connected and important, again, as it's related to that family stability piece. And we all share a great role in that, in the family's success.
With respect to time and wanting to ensure that both boards have adequate time for questions, do we have any other final questions that the co-facilitators here would like to ask before we pass it back? All good? Okay. Well, again, thank you all for engaging in this conversation. We really appreciate it and all the hard work that you do for our youngest residents. I will turn it back to Chair Peterson and Mr. Chair for any questions from the boards.
Yeah, any questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. With respect to the data, and I'm referring to the bottom of page 3, kind of dovetails into page 4. And I think you spoke to this, but it's just Scott County and experiencing just a high number in the last 3 years of refugees or those from coming to our country for the first time in this new construct of what public education looks like. And it speaks to the current data doesn't distinguish from those students who entered the district versus those who were eligible to be screened but simply didn't get screening. Are there barriers to that information? Is it data privacy? Is it just we don't have a good way to engage in that space? I'm just looking in terms of, is there a better way to capture some of that data?
full disclosure, this is kind of the first time I've been looking at this data. So we are, I think awareness for us now is what about those students that either maybe were screened and moved in and we didn't get their paperwork, so we just don't know, or they didn't complete it. So we found that we have an area that we want to take a look at more closely as a district to see what is going on, and do some continued outreach. And we've been talking about again, that transition, from peers, from the students that attend our preschool programs that come to us, and then the students that may not. What do we need to look at there to better understand what's going on?
Thank you. And certainly appreciate all of the effort, all the great work and the transparency. So I want to acknowledge that as well. Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, chairs. I just think this is a great opportunity for us to come together. You know, we're all sort of fishing in the same pond, but yet we all have very different and unique and very important charters that we're tasked with. But the more that we can work together and try to break down some of these silos or something similar to that, the better. The better, because we're at the county, we are all about hope and transformation. How do we break out, you know, move outcomes along, but break generational chains that leads to hope and leads to outcomes. And so the more that we can do that with our partners as we're in this together, I think is better for everybody. So I really appreciate the time everyone's put in, the reporting. I know some of this is new, this is great. Sharing some of this data, I can only see good things from here. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. Thanks for this. I just would love to hear from each of you on the side of the table, based on the work you've done putting this data together, this conversation. What's the next step? What are you going to do differently or in addition because of what we did here? What kind of connections? I think it helps us all be held accountable for this work we're doing with these connections and trying to do exactly what my colleague said, you know, really change the lives of families who live here. So if you're willing, I understand if you have to say pass.
I can just start because mine is very short. This is something that's in progress. As you can see on the early childhood screening and kindergarten readiness report, we've got Shakopee and New Prague, and I'm currently working with the other school districts to get their data on ECS and early reading as well. So not necessarily that we can compare across districts, but that we can find districts that might be struggling or need a little bit more help than others, or areas that we can do better on. So that's something that I have in progress working with other districts on.
I think from the library, it's just continuing to think about the ways that, and actually in the next part of the meeting, we're going to talk about some of those next steps on things that I've talked with the school district about that I think we can do with the library in particular. But I think it's understanding and providing those service where's the right spots to do that. So it might not always be at the library. It might be that we can work together and we do some of those services at the school, or we do them out in the community, or we do things like share that Read Mobile and take that vehicle out, and we can all do a number of different things. So for me, it's just thinking beyond our four walls and knowing that what we do doesn't always have to just happen in one spot, and thinking about that. I also was really, from some of our initial conversations, energized by this idea of probably, working across training staff differently and having those conversations different. I think we all get into kind of our mode, but, hearing when I was talking with Sarah and Nika about, hey, could we talk to your staff about the the Minnesota Read Act? Yes, let's talk about that. Let's think about that, and being willing to do something different, I think is the best spot for us to be. And I'm really excited to continue this work moving forward.
Yeah, I think that it's things we've done, but next steps are to continue to evolve with the needs and the barriers that we see. We've done a lot of creative things in the last few years with some intentionality around this, and creating things, translating things, screening different ways, connecting with families about their barriers, all those things, and through the partnership of Come to Better Solutions, I think that will continue. It will always be a part of the conversations we have with families early. Another thing I think is a key next step would be soliciting some more family voice, some input from families about how we can be helpful and where they're having challenges, and just having some more dialogue about that with the families it pertains to.
Yes, I would echo that. And I would also add that I think next steps should really be the whole family and empowering the parent, caregiver to really the ability to read themselves. And so, we're doing partnerships with the adult learning English and having them be confident with reading at home. And then it also, the child is seeing their adult caregiver reading. And so what other ways can we empower the adults in children's lives to have what they need to then be modeling for the students and singing to them and giving them all of those beautiful gifts. And then also thinking of infants and toddlers and preschoolers. We've talked a lot about preschoolers tonight, but the infants and the toddlers, there's so many opportunities there that we can lean into.
I have two next steps. One is in partnership with Jennifer and Sarah, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And the other is digging into our early childhood screenings for specifically 5-year-olds, and what do we need to do to ensure that we can screen more children in those first 30 days that we haven't yet been able to screen? Because I do believe that will help us with our programming for students, whether it's Tier 1 instruction or interventions.
Through Family Resource Centers, continue the partnerships and collaborations. Already, I think we've heard some great ideas for next steps, and making sure that families are really aware of the resources and all the great programs that are out there to support them.
Well, I have a question. You have the screening, and then you identify a certain population that needs services, needs help, that there's some thing that needs to be corrected or remediated or help, whatever, however you want to express it. How do you track the percent of those children that need help, that take advantage, the family that takes advantage of that? I mean, if you just do screening and that's it, do anything else beyond screening, I don't think screening benefits you. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it's identifying and then providing services to the families in need. So how do you measure that? How do you track? It relates somewhat, I think, to your question.
I can start by answering that. We do track, if they are referred for vision, and they're referred to go have a more comprehensive vision, screening or an eye exam, because our vision screening is pretty basic and really, students that maybe have just turned 3, and so trying to get the accurate read on some students that might not be ready to sit still or whatever. And so we do track to see which students are and which families are going in for that exam. We'll either, if we have not heard back from them, if they did go back to the eye doctor or made an appointment, we will follow up with them to make sure that they have the resource, or here's a phone number of a clinic. 3 times we'll reach out to do a follow-up on all of those different ways. I also would add that if they are referred for a full special education evaluation, that it is truly a parent choice to move forward with that step. And so they're given all the information, they're followed up on several times, but at the end of the day, it is a parent choice.
Sure. I do have one more, if I could. And this, I had the same question that Lori had about, slide 8 or 9, about basically all the things you're doing, and yet the last 6 years, the numbers across pretty much every demographic group are dropping in terms of third grade reading. I wonder about best practices, you know. If you, it would seem to me that, and maybe maybe you do this, maybe you're a best practice hound, but it would seem to me there's got to be school districts or either out of state, in state, wherever that they've got something going. And to analyze why are they having more success? Why, you know, I mean, is there a best practice in each one of your areas that maybe, I mean, what's the best practice with the Readmobile? I mean, or best practice with screening, or best practice responding to those that have screening needs? I mean, I would just encourage, I guess it's maybe not a question, but to try and find the best practices, rather than always trying to invent the wheel, I think. But then you have to decide if that's, what they're doing is transferable, obviously, to your setting, you know, but, yeah, so that's what I think, I wonder about. Okay, other questions or comments? Yeah.
One. Thank you. This is maybe more of a comment and opportunity, I guess. It's part of the beauty of having the county and the school come together, but it sounds like to me maybe that the libraries and the schools have a little bit of an opportunity to connect here on just some of the material. You talk about the READ Act and some of the things that the schools have done here. I think we'd all agree we've had a lot of curriculum adoptions lately and changes going on. And I happen to just have these in here because this is the type of book that we often seen a few years ago, and it just kind of describes the words here. And now a lot of our kids are using these UFly decodable books that really seem to, everyone has agreed that are helpful. And I haven't had a chance to go through and dig through the public libraries that we all have, but maybe there's some funding needs or things like that, or maybe you guys do have a lot of these books, but I think if we had a lot of the similar things that we're having in the schools at the county, it would be a helpful event.
Thank you. I think that one of the things that we have started to talk about is, are there opportunities within our collection, right? Because we, throughout the year, we're buying collection. We do have those things in our collection. But again, as we should be talking with each other about what particular ones might be best to have in the collection and such. So I think we have some opportunities from that perspective to make sure, and then teachers can share, go down to your public library, and those books are available, and you can check them out, and you don't have to pay for them, and all of those pieces. So there's certainly some opportunities there with what we put into our collections.
Thank you.
And I'll just add before we move on, just to thank everyone for your time tonight and also your efforts as we move throughout the course of a year. I think this is a great example of how we can work together to achieve a lot. We talk about Scott County being a great place to live, and I think this is just one example of how we know we have some potentially challenging times coming, both at the county level and school district level, with some federal things. But partnerships like this give us an opportunity to try to utilize and maximize the resources that we have together for better outcomes. And I think that's just something real positive about this relationship with the school district and the county. If we can continue growing that and developing that, I just see a lot of great things happening, because a lot of great things have happened since we met last in 2023. So I just applaud all the efforts that have been made, and I look forward to seeing the progress that continues to be made moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you for those words. Any more comments or questions? We're going to move on to 7.2, update on collaborative plan for improving educational outcomes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Chair Peterson. Jake Grusing, Transformation Enterprise Services Director for Scott County.
Jim McClousich, Assistant Superintendent, Shakopee Schools.
We are going to kick off the update on the collaborative plan between the school district and the county. As mentioned, we last met in October 2023. At that time, the two boards agreed upon two objectives. One focused on early childhood screenings, the other focused on attendance. We already mentioned the goal of doubling the percentage of children screened at 3 by expanding the networks and processes for referring children to early childhood screenings. And we believe the data that the school district provided shows that we achieved that goal through the work of a lot of the folks who are at the table here today. I am going to run through the tactic by tactic for early childhood screenings, and then I believe Jim will cover attendance, but of course, you're welcome to jump in if I misspeak on the early childhood screening piece. So strategy 1, working together, expand the network of referral sources and enhance the existing referral processes. Tactic 1, you can see it there on the screen, the progress we made. District and county staff made connections with multiple healthcare providers and clinics, child care providers, the community center in Shakopee, food shelves, SCA, CAP, Head Start, and many more to increase the number of referrals. And that was reflected in the data in the Scott County Delivers packet. Tactic 2, Pearson, Shakopee Public Schools have an extensive plan between the early childhood team and the Welcome Center with monthly check-in meetings, so that coordination has been occurring. Tactic 3, this was presented here in the boardroom to the county board. The CAP students increasing the awareness in early childhood screening. They worked with our communication staff at the county to do little PSA videos that we've distributed. In addition to that, Tactic 3, the district has developed screening materials that have been created in various formats and have been sent out via mail, posters, email, their website, and social media, and that's on a recurring schedule. Tactic 4, that tactic is now operationalized into the Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, and Child and Teen Checkups procedures. So text reminders go out to parents of participants when the children reach 3 and again at age 4. Follow-along participants automatically receive an early childhood screening flyer at 30 months and 36 months. All family home visits are assessed for the need for early childhood screening. In 2025, 96% of all 3 to 5-year-olds either had completed their early childhood screening or are already receiving those services. That's 96% of the families that were participating in family home visiting. So that program in particular is making that connection back to early childhood screening. Tactic 5, the district is tracking how families hear about early childhood screening. And Tactic 6, in 2024 and 2025, it hasn't occurred yet. The district and public health are sharing the census data. Anything you'd add to that, Jim? Nope. Okay. Strategy 2, working together to expand opportunities for families to participate in early childhood screenings for 3-year-old children. Tactic 1, yes, the district has done that currently, offering day, evening, and Saturday morning appointments for early childhood screening. And Scott County GIS has mapped locations of students that were not screened, and we've targeted the outreach there with the Readmobile. So Bonavista is one example, where we had library staff and district staff from the Welcome Center go out there and actually complete full early childhood screenings at Bonavista, a model we hope to duplicate. Public Health also conducted 17 screenings and taken that opportunity at the WIC clinic. And we had a little, I think this is the next 2, I would say, we can't quite put the green check mark on the tactics. The last strategy, I would say every one of those we've completed the work. The Public Health completing screening, especially at the WIC clinics, we had a little start and stop where Public Health had started doing some of that work with WIC, and then we had believed we received information that said, well, we actually would be better if the district was doing the screening. So that's something that we need to follow up on again going forward from this meeting to make sure if we have opportunities as the county to conduct screenings, that we are taking advantage of those. And if the district prefers to do all the screenings, we just want to make sure then we're pointing people in the right direction.
Jake, I gotta ask on that one, because that's when they're in our WIC clinic and we're doing hearing, we're doing vision. So Jake, when they're in our WIC
I don't think it's on. Sorry.
Take three.
There you go.
When they're in our WIC clinic, we're doing the hearing, we're doing the vision. Why are we not doing those screenings? I thought at the last meeting when we set this goal, that kind of was the direction, like one stop instead of having to send them off to another location, and then we could make a connection with the school. Is that, why did we go away from that, or what's the issue on that?
Do you want to respond to that?
If it's not taking place, it should be taking place, and we would cite it as being miscommunication. But if you have the ability to do the screening, we would appreciate the screening being done. I think there's been some discussion about a low level of lost funding if you complete the screening, but we would much rather just have the student or child screened when the opportunity presents itself. So if there's any further questions on that, feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, that's what I walked away from the discussion last time, that at least you know they're getting screened and we've got them there. We should be doing it and getting it done and then sharing that information with you. So that is the direction I'm hearing the school would prefer.
Exactly, yes.
The next tactic, actually, I think we covered that relatively well. So agreeing on 3 to 4 measures, additional measures, that will indicate whether this investment of time to make sure kids get screened at 3, to track their progress through kindergarten readiness up through reading at grade level by 3rd grade. I heard Chair Peterson ask questions about that. What are we going to be tracking going forward? Can we look back from the kids who are reading at grade level? What interventions did they receive? That's something that we'll need to continue to work on. And lastly, reviewing the students not screened, as I mentioned, targeting the outreach with the Readmobile. And then reviewing progress in February 2024. We certainly did not review progress in a joint board setting like this, but the staff have been meeting multiple times each year, 2024, 2025, and we've met a few times already in 2026 as well. Anything I missed from your perspective?
Very thorough, sir.
Oh,
Very thorough.
thank you. All right, hand it over to Jim.
All right, so I'm going to take a few minutes and walk through attendance with you. And, you know, going back to when we met last time, we were coming out of COVID, and attendance was an extreme concern across the country, not just the county. I think we've taken a number of steps since then, and we have in fact seen growth in attendance by different metrics, meaning number of students in school, but also by the state's definition of what's known as consistent attendance, which is being in school 90% of the time. So taking a look at tactic number 1, we did a series of follow-up sessions immediately after the board meeting on a monthly cadence with both school district leadership and county leadership. Our goals were to get some common definitions of terms, because I think that part of what we discovered was that we were defining things one way, the county was defining things another way, and there hadn't been enough communication over the years to iron those things out. In particular, we wanted to have a shared understanding of what what does it mean if a student has deep end needs? And what are some of the characteristics of these students, and how can we better work to intervene in their attendance to make sure that they're in school? I think more importantly, we still have meetings twice a year between, when I say school district leadership, we're talking building level leadership, principals, attendance teams, and folks from the county truancy office, to have conversations to make sure that we are in fact identifying the right students to refer on to the county, in particular the PATH and PASS programs, which you'll be hearing more about later. And we find these programs invaluable in helping some of our needier students get back on track and be back in school. The next 2 tactics I'm going to address together, so tactics 2 and 3. At a school level, we have worked to align what we call our multi-tiered system of supports, also known as MTSS, to track and support student attendance. You know, what this means is, in particular, at the elementary level, classroom teachers are very good at tracking down students because they've got that group of 20 to 28. But at the secondary level, where you have 7 teachers, students can fall through the cracks. But our current system, we're really working to assign students to specific teachers, specific support staff, and we're making sure that families are getting follow-up phone calls. And not only follow-up phone calls, but Often when a student returns to school, they've fallen behind, they're struggling, they don't feel like they belong. So really sitting down and trying to build individual plans so that when the student comes back, they feel like they're a part of the school community and they can get back on track and feel like they're being successful. And then the final tactic on this page, we did in fact develop the attendance engagement specialist position. We were fortunate to have that position for 1.5 years, and we'll share some data on the success of that program. Madeline Hill, who filled that job, did an outstanding job of working with students who were in that so-called deep end and getting them back into school. Due to some of the budgetary problems we're facing right now, funding for that program lapsed the first of the year. Number 2, timely referrals to existing prevention programs. One of the things that we did right after the last joint board meeting was we as a school district communicated with the county to really try to do a better job of defining what is absent, but which absences are the ones that we have the most concern about. And what I mean by that is, yes, we have students who miss school for extracurriculars. We have students who miss school for different trips, whether it be to other countries or whatnot. But really what we've discovered and what we worked on is what the county wants referrals in cases where it's mental health, physical health, other impeding barriers, because those are things that we can really work on, and those are the students most in need of support. And again, I reference Path and Pass as being very important in getting these students back in school. And so really what we've done is we've refined our system. And as part of the refining of the system, made sure that we're getting the students to the county that the county is most able to provide support to. That way we're not overwhelming your system, and by doing that, we're really leveraging the services that you can provide, and we are in fact getting more students back in school. With regard to the next tactic, yes, we have systemically worked to rectify this, and it is mandatory that students receive a referral before we can go to truancy. We're really trying to limit truancy referrals because we recognize that the punitive nature often just pushes students and families further away. So we will exhaust every single step we can before we take that step. I do want to mention, as was said earlier, we can make the referral, we can encourage the family to go. We don't have a means of forcing participation. And then strategy 3, interestingly enough, as of July 1st, 2025, it became state law that districts needed to notify the local welfare agency, that being the county, of any student that was dropped from the roll for 15 days, and we need to make every effort to locate that student and report their address, to county officials who take appropriate steps. So, the one thing, and I think Jake already covered this, we didn't reconvene in February of 2024, but here we are tonight, and I feel like we've done a good job of implementing these tactics, these strategies, and we are in fact seeing continued growth in student attendance in Shakopee Public Schools.
Nothing further from me.
All right, thank you very much.
So next, I believe we're handing it off to Nika, Sarah, and Jennifer to talk through library partnerships. Come on up. Yes, please. And you can just scroll down with the arrows here.
Okay, let's see how it goes. Good evening, members of the boards. I'm Sarah Wernberg. I'm co-director of Learning and Teaching and Equity with Shakopee Public Schools for grades 6 through 12. And I get to kick us off. We are talking about a partnership between the Shakopee Public Schools and the library. So I'm going to give an overview of what is currently in place with the intersection of our work, and then I'm going to pass it to Jen. She's going to walk through some usage data, and then Nika is going to update you on where we are dreaming of going next. And I will say, the three of us can dream really big together. So what you are going to see in a few slides is not the full gamut of where we are dreaming of building partnerships, but it is some very concrete next steps that we think we can commit to within the next couple of months. So currently, as you heard Jen talk about earlier, we are all focusing on that early literacy programming. This serves our parents, this serves the library, empowering parents as child's first reader, for teachers, excuse me, promoting the love and joy of reading, and then that amazing Readmobile. Other things that are serving both of our programmings is that automatic access to Scott County Library via the virtual student library card. So our students can access databases. You'll see some data coming up on ebooks and how many times our students are accessing ebooks. Another service is access to live tutors online from 3 to 7 p.m. for homework help. So our students all have access to that. And then lastly, the adolescent and teen programming like ACT Prep, resume and career supports, and then some LinkedIn Learning resources. So I'll pass it to Jen.
All right, thank you, and hello again. I just want to talk a little bit about the data to give you kind of a glimpse of some of the mostly data around the virtual library cards. So virtual library cards, for those of you that don't know what that is, we launched that program with Shakopee Schools and the library, the county in the 2019-2020 school year. And it's available, those digital library cards are available to all students K through 12 plus the Takata Learning Center for the students in Shakopee. It's a really simple process. It's automated. So when the students register for Shakopee Schools, they automatically get access to that digital library card that gives them access to a number of resources. So really, families don't have to do anything. You register, you get your digital library card. What it does give access to is they can borrow physical, they could come to the library and borrow physical items. They could use our computers if they didn't have computer or internet access at home. The ebook collection and the audiobook collection, which I'll show you some data here in just a moment. And then also all of our databases, we have a number of databases. Sarah talked about a few of them, but that homework help, LinkedIn Learning, et cetera. Some of the things that I can see that are really benefits from this program and the two of us working together is it really is a bridge between school libraries and public libraries. It expands the access to resources that students have and also should help eliminate some of that cost or do some of that cost sharing. So this data up here just gives you a snapshot of how many students in Shakopee over the last year accessed their or used their digital library card. It's by month. And so overall, in the last year, 4,868 students in Shakopee have used their digital card in one of those capacities that I shared. When I look at this, the one thing that I notice is even in the summer, we have students that are accessing, certainly the numbers are less, but we still have students that are accessing and using their digital library cards and the resources that they have available.
Can I ask a question about that number before you move on?
Yeah, of course.
So is that 4,868 different students or 4,868 times that students are using their card?
It's times.
Do you know how many unique students?
I have you, yep, I'm going to get there in just a moment.
Okay, sorry.
What I can give you is unique users for the ebook collection. We don't have unique users for some of the other things like the databases and such. I have data on that, but it doesn't break it down by Shakopee specifically. It would have anybody that had a library card that accessed those databases. But I can give you the Shakopee ebooks in just a moment.
And Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, just a follow-up. So September seems to be an anomaly. What happened in September? Like more people wanted to read.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Back to school.
If I could just take maybe even a guess, kids are back in school, they're ready to learn, teachers are promoting the program, they're talking about it as resources. When I look at some of this information and we have conversations, the promotion and the marketing, to me, is one of the things that we can all do to make sure that students are aware that these resources are available. But that's off the top of my head.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, so this is, the next couple of slides will give you some information about ebooks specifically. Ebooks are we've had a huge increase in trends in the public library of people, adults and students wanting to use ebooks and audiobooks. So these are, again, this data is both the ebooks and the audiobooks. So it might be somebody reading a book on their Kindle or on their iPad, or it might be somebody listening through their earbuds, right? So it could be either one. So what you're seeing here, and this is specific to Shakopee, is that almost 11,500 books were opened up through the ebook collection. The one thing that I didn't mention with the ebook collection that is important, so the school uses, their ebook collection is called Sora, and then the public library, and that is really marketed to schools. Libby is really marketed to public libraries. This digital library card now opens up for your students access to both. K-12 often use Sora more, and high school students then would lean towards Libby. Again, just a more expanded collection. So again, over 11,500 books were opened, and in last year, Shakopee students through the ebook collection read just slightly over 3,600 hours. So that's a little bit about the usage of that. And then the next slide actually gets into that unique user. And so this is a unique user for ebooks. So 1,117 unique users using the ebook collection. So one of the things that I think about, and questions from even our last presentation, this is, I think, where there's a really great opportunity for us to make sure that the collection really meets both needs, right? Meets school students' needs as well as meets the needs of the public library. So I think there's some opportunities there. So that's about the virtual library cards. I also just wanted to quickly share some data specific, again, to Shakopee about the Readmobile. Again, we did talk about this already, but after school in Shakopee alone, we had over 45 visits with the Readmobile and met with about 112 people in the summer. Summer is a really big time for us to have the Readmobile out and about, and we do a lot of different sites. One of the sites we hit is the Shakopee Summer Academy. We visit there. We visit Mikasa, and we also visit in other sites in Shakopee too. And so if you look at both of that data, we had over 20 visits during the summer and just over 3,500 attendees at the Readmobile visits. So I think that that hits kind of the data that we can have, or that I have tonight on the things we did. The one thing I should just, it's been mentioned, but the other, in the past year, we did do the Readmobile with screening at 2 different sites in August and screened, I think it was 8 children in the Readmobile, and we already have at least 8 different days scheduled for next summer where county library staff and Readmobile will be working together for additional screenings.
So I'm going to talk about the opportunities for partnership. And as Sarah mentioned, we had a wonderful dreaming session with our 2 media specialists in the district, Sandy Reiches and Katie Bone. And out of that, we have some very tangible next steps. One is what Jen just referenced about expanding that Readmobile service. So we'd like to have more frequent use, partnering with the county, the library, and with district employees to get that out and about in our communities. And then expanding some tutoring options within that Readmobile, specifically targeting some of our elementary students. And that's where earlier we talked about kind of some alignment of programming, and we think we can develop some tutoring supports together that can be used in that Readmobile. And then, of course, we just talked about expanding the Readmobile early childhood screening opportunities for families and community members. And then the second opportunity we have for partnership is really expanding our library services and bringing them into the school sites. So we're pretty excited about this. Thinking through how we might open our school libraries in our neighborhoods using Scott County resources to keep that access available in the summer to our students. Looking at teen programs at our school sites, but partnering with the county to deliver some of those programs. Thinking about extending our K-12 book clubs. We did a redesign of our gifted and enrichment programming for elementary students, and it's implemented this year. And so we have some more opportunities for students to participate, and we found that we could very quickly and easily partner with the county on providing more opportunities there. And then expanding the tutoring programs that are currently available and bringing those back into the schools. So bringing those on site and looking at possibilities of evenings and weekend tutoring supports. So those are some exciting things that we are working on. We commit to complete the following by April 1st. So actually the book clubs that I just mentioned, our 2 media specialists are already working with librarians at the county to purchase additional books to support those book clubs. And then we are doing some targeted feedback from our students on the types of programs they would be interested in, so that when we're thinking about partnering and bringing those programs into the school, we're doing it based on their interests and not what we think kids want. And then we are going to schedule dates and determine some logistics for opening those school libraries. Again, not every library in every school, but some type of a rotation to keep some access to those school libraries throughout the summer. And then we have a meeting scheduled to talk about our tutoring model and flesh out those details about how we might partner to provide those supports to students. That's what we have tonight.
All right, well, I want to just say, in Scott County, across all areas of Scott County, collaboration has sort of been a hallmark of Scott County, and you are really excelling at that. And I want to thank you that you're working together on this plan and collaborating, and that's a great thing, that we're working together like this. Do you have a comment? Any comments here at this point?
I have a comment. The virtual library card that you brought up, Jen, I think it's really unique in the counties, and most counties don't offer that. So it's a great opportunity for our students in Shakopee and the other school districts to take advantage of that virtual library card.
I agree, Commissioner. It was a really unique opportunity, and frankly, this is beyond Shakopee schools, but there really isn't any reason every student in Scott County shouldn't have virtual library cards. And we should do this with all of our districts. It's a matter of bringing our IT folks together to figure out that connection. But once it happens, it's super simple, because you guys have new students come, they log in and they register on Infinite Campus, and they immediately get that library card. And in fact, that library card is also, I think, their lunch code number, so easy to remember, because all kids remember their lunch code number, right? Because who doesn't want lunch? So we've really tried to make it really simple to make that happen. And so once that happens, it just automatically occurs. I will say again, I think where we can all really continue to work on that is getting the word out that it exists. Even if you go onto our website, you can get a good glimpse of all the databases that are available. One of the things that as a parent, I didn't even know about until I became the library director, but you can go out and take practice ACT tests right through that. You can use your library. And so all of those things that we do very jointly and have similar goals can occur. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think we're shifting gears here now. We're talking about vaping and detection and healthy community, and here comes the law.
Well, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. I'm Jeff Pilecki. I'm the principal of Shakopee High School. Ron, let you introduce yourself.
Ron Holst, our county attorney.
And yes, I was just thinking that we've been hearing about early childhood and all these things, so we're going to fast forward to the teenage years and talk about vaping and some other things that are going. But let's see, is it right here? Okay. Before I jump into it though, I think the partnership that we've had with the county, I mean, I go back to man, over 15 years ago when I was an assistant principal at Prior Lake High School and working with Ron's office and programming climb theater, we would do things like that. The county has been an outstanding partner on any issues of helping to support, proactive measures that school districts can do to help be proactive and prevent, different types of chemical use. And what I'm reporting on tonight is just another example of that. So we have at Shakopee High School and also at other schools in the county, we've had the opportunity to have vape detectors, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so bear with me here, vape detectors installed at the high school. And, the lens that we take with it, it's really about a prevention focus. The vape detector it's one tool out of other tools and resources that we use to curb this issue that really, when you look at really coming off the heels of COVID, is when we saw really a dramatic increase in the amount of vape usage. When I first started as an administrator, it was just good old-fashioned cigarettes and things like that, and you rarely see that anymore. So we've had an excellent partnership with the county, and Ron's office has the Choose Not to Use. It's a nonprofit out of the Scott County Attorney's Office where we're able to get a lot of support in funding for different initiatives. And like I said, it's an ongoing concern, not just in Shakopee and Scott County, but it is everywhere. I sit on monthly meetings and South Suburban Principal Conference meetings, and it's a topic that comes up often. And the vape detectors, we have, we're 4 months in, but really what, and I can speak to this, is, we're really trying to, have those in place, because what they are helping us to do right out of the gates is provide a better restroom environment, improve our supervision, and again, it's a proactive, prevention-based response. Ron, I'll let you chime in here a little bit, because I know you've worked with other school districts to talk about just the install and the cost, if you want to just take a few moments to talk about that piece.
Yeah, sure, thank you. In the previous slide, I mentioned that for the vaping, kind of how my Choose Not to Use got involved. I know when I met with the administration in Shakopee, Prior Lake, Jordan, New Prague, one of the things that really stuck out to me is that it was primarily initiated by students. Students going to administration and saying, hey, you got to do something about this vaping in the bathrooms. We can't stand to go in there, which I found very reassuring, kind of refreshing. In my line of work, you get pretty cynical. So to see these students step up and say, hey, we need to get something done here. So that was really, in my mind, really, really great, and showed that students did care, because you'd hear from school resource officers. Years ago, you'd walk in the restroom and, as mentioned, it smelled like tobacco. Now you go in, it smells like watermelon or cherries or something like that. So anyway, but that was really good that students actually took the initiative, went to administration and say, hey, we need to do something about this. So that's where Choose Not to Use came into play. You can see right now for Shakopee right now, just $48,500. We're still committed to doing the middle school. I've talked to administration about that. That was the plan originally. So we still plan on going ahead with that. It's just a matter of timing and getting the funding in place, because we have other projects going on also. So it's not cheap, but it's worth it. As mentioned, this is a proactive step. With my office, with law enforcement, we're reactive. We react to crimes because we live in a free society. So what's one thing we can do to hopefully educate our kids not to get to my office is education and prevention. So that's where Choose Not to Use comes in. We want to educate kids. We want to do what we can to have them make the best choices in life and prevent them from getting to a stage in their life where they have to come and see my prosecutors for another reason. So that's the whole idea behind Choose Not to Use.
And I would just add, one of the things, like I said, out of the gates that we are able to do is, we have them installed in 22 restrooms. So if you've been in our high school before, that's, the east, the south, the southwest, 3 levels, boys, girls. I would say about 90% of our school has the vape detectors in them. So it's a large area, right, to cover. And so you look at the resources, the purpose is, it's not to get into a cat and mouse game of whack-a-mole, like who can we get or who can we do that. But what we were able to do really early on is look at that established trend data. What are the hot spots in the school by looking at this? Because we communicated to staff at the beginning of the year, we communicated to students, but we found if we can take the resources that we have during passing times, things of that nature, have adults outside those restrooms in those hot spots by using those vape detectors to help detect them, we are able to create a safer, welcoming environment in the restroom. And I just remember, when we initiated, just kids just coming up kind of to their point saying, thanks for doing this, because they noticed that. And so, the other question I get is like, well, is it reducing it? Is it making a difference? And, I tell people, I said, this is year zero of this, because we're 4 months in. This time of the year, we could be different referrals, 30, 40 different referrals. I would say we're probably up. And it's not because we're trying to go out and try to catch more kids, but we have another tool at our disposal that when we're looking at trends or you have a concern about a student, you can use those vape detectors, right? Because we're not, you don't have cameras in a restroom, right? You don't have cameras in a stall. And so, yes, can kids be sneaky and can they do different? Of course they can. But if we have that as another tool to help identify, well, then what that does is we view it as what that is that's making a connection. It's connecting with parents, and most importantly, it's getting them connected with resources to try to break that cycle. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about addiction. And so when you're talking about addiction, the old-fashioned way, again, to the cigarettes, of the old punitive, that's not going to take care of addiction. So we're using this as a tool to find it early, to connect with parents, to get resources to those families to help break that cycle, is what we're trying to accomplish. The vape disposal kits, I wanted to mention this. This is relatively new to me, but it was something when we did our joint meeting that was brought to my attention. And so this is still something that is in development for us, but this is another partnership. Scott County Statewide Health Improvement and Scott County Environmental Services Department, vape disposal kits. As I mentioned before, there's the addiction component to that, but then there's also the environmental factor. And again, not just Shakopee, it is what kids do, what people do with these things when they're done. That's an issue too. Could ask the plumber who does the work here at Shakopee High School. It's a real issue, and so there is a component of education of proper disposal. Part of that, when we do have these things, are there safe places to dispose of them? And so I was just made aware of that within just this month. That's going to be another area that we're going to be partnering with. And you can see there's other schools in the county, Prior Lake, Jordan, Savage, New Prague, Belle Plaine, participating in this as well too. And there'll be some, additional education resources included with those kits. And again, this component is encouraging that safe storage and preventing the environmental hazards involved with this as well too. And then finally, again, another example of partnership with Choose Not to Use. We were fortunate enough back in October, we had all of our 10th graders participate in an assembly. If you're a basketball fan, you may have heard of Chris Herron. He's a former NBA player. Unfortunately, had some struggles with chemical dependency, but now he goes on the circuit and goes to schools all across the country. And we were fortunate enough to have him visit Shakopee High School and just had a really strong message about, just overcoming addiction and chemical use, and a really inspiring story. And so that was an opportunity that we had to, again, that proactive message. And I know we've got a student-led group that our chemical health counselor leads. It's called SPARK. I think the acronym is Sabers Practicing Accountability, Responsibility, and Knowledge. And so we'll do different PSA announcements during, just different opportunities during the school year just to keep this topic in front of kids and that proactive approach. So just some really good examples of the partnership with the county and the work that we're trying to do to really, try to make a difference and help support students and families.
Say one thing about that.
Yeah.
So I'm say one thing about the Chris Heron project. This is at an assembly, is at a different school, but I asked him, he operates a treatment facility on the East Coast where he's from. And I asked him, what's the biggest issue for his treatment facility? It's male teenage marijuana psychosis. Yeah, marijuana. Everyone thinks this is going to be a great deal, legalizing marijuana. You got a big awakening coming to you if you think that's a good idea. It's just my little political soapbox there. But yeah, he said marijuana psychosis is his number one issue that he deals with. And he said it takes longer to get somebody off of marijuana when they have the marijuana psychosis than it does for meth or cocaine.
I think, yeah. That was everything that we had for you, so.
I had a question. So the vape detectors, is that a silent alarm, or is it an audible alarm to deter the students? Is it both?
Yeah. No, great question. And so there's the little picture of it, right? So it looks like, it kind of looks like just like a smoke detector. So in the rest, it's silent. So, but the way that it gets a hit is that it's tied to an application so that I can go on the computer interface and it'll show you, like each restroom is labeled, and it'll show you, okay, an occurrence on this date, and it'll have the time. There's even some of them, I believe there's even some that will even like detect like certain types of sounds. But as far as the students in the restrooms go, like if a student vapes in the restroom, they're not, like an alarm isn't gonna go off or anything like that, but it lets you know like when the hits are occurring.
Did you guys go with the bullying one or not?
What's that?
Did you guys go with the bullying one?
Well, I think there's like a certain number of those that we have, yeah.
There's some that you can have set to detect bullying words. So it'll detect aggressive behavior, like if someone's screaming or shouting or, fight or other colorful language possibly, that could also set it off. I don't know if Shakopee has all of those or not, but there's various features that can be set up for that.
We have some, but we haven't had any of those, so. Anything like the sound ones, it's been the vapes, so yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, what happens after the detector goes off? How do you determine the students, if there's 10 kids that come out of there? And what are the consequences?
It's hard, right? I mean, it's hard sometimes, Nick. It's if you have a passing time and there's 10 students in the restroom and they're in stalls and we don't know, so there are sometimes it's gonna go off and you're not going to, know about it. But what we do is we have a log that we keep, right? And so, we do identify specific times that says, okay, we're, just like, kind of like as I would patrol the parking lot, right? Do kids have parking permits? Do you have you gotta maintain like certain times where you're gonna have like periodic checks, right? And so maybe what we would do is during a heavy traffic time is we're going to, do those periodic checks. And even then, like, it's impossible to, okay, I think you're gonna be doing it, and, some kids can put it in all different places, and, so that's where the cat and mouse game comes in. But what we have noticed before with it is that if it does go off, you can check, you can look at cameras outside of the restroom, because we have cameras all throughout the building. And you do find that trend, like we have had instances where, we might not be able to say, hey, there was a vape on, a person, but like, look, there was 3 different times at this time you were in that area, and that can just warrant a phone call. Hey, mom and dad, I just want to let you know. At this particular time, like, right, because we're not, the purpose behind this is education and informing. It's not just to, to nail kids. And so that's how we've used it before. But there are times before where if it's less traffic and it goes off and there's only that one kid that walks out and you notice it, call that kid down. You go through the whole process just like you would any other type of deal. And, you may find something, you may not find something, but you're always going to follow up with a phone call anyway. So that's usually what that process looks like. Yeah.
Would you have
We have 1, 2, 3. We have 7. We have 7 staff members. Yeah.
It's all app driven, so you have 7 people that have the app.
So
Can respond to.
Again, applaud the proactive approach, all that, and I'm gonna preface this by saying I was a dumb kid in college who smoked, right? Stupidest thing I ever did, bravest thing was to quit. Are there resources available to students who are actually trying to, whether it's nicotine or, other things that?
No, great question. Yeah, so we've got Megan Geeson. She is our chemical health counselor. I would say this, so if you want to talk about like a next step or another tool, is, when I talk to my deans and assistant principals, is yes, the answer to that question is we do have resources, but I think just with how large we are, we can always use more, right? More resources or more programs or options that are in our tool belt to help families navigate it. But, I think we definitely have a lot to work with to begin with.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, in my mind's eye, this thing has to be going off a lot.
Yes.
And I'm looking this, I'm kind of snickering the whole time because I'm thinking of this Motley Crue song that keeps kind of going through my mind. And then I'm thinking about Mr. Kirkman back in the day. There'd be a watch at the door and a bang and dispersal. And then if he caught you, which I didn't partake, but he'd take you before the Board of Education, which was a big paddle back in the day. That was back in the old day. So yeah, that thing's got to be just lit up all the time.
It's busy, but you know what? That's where we find the trend data of like, where do we need to have more adults in the area, right? Because you have to be realistic with what you are able to do when you have X number of adults, but then you've got 22 of these things in different restrooms, right?
Yeah.
So you do have to be realistic with that, for sure.
Thank you.
The commissioner was originally Alice Cooper.
Was it? Okay. I want to be on the record. My bad.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The choose not to use has been helping with this. That's funding.
Thank you. Might be going the wrong way.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, again, Madam and Mr. Chair, Jim McClousage. We've met a few times.
Good evening, Nikki Holberg with Child and Family Services Director.
So we're going to take a few minutes to talk about attendance and some of the work that's gone on and will continue to go on. As you know, this was one of our major goals coming out of our last joint meeting 3 years ago. And when we left that meeting, we sat down, county, school district together, and we set some collective goals so that we could have a real focus on where we were going to try to encourage kids back to school. Looking at these bullet points, I think the most important thing that came from those meetings was alignment. As I mentioned before, there were a lot of things that we were doing for the county that the county didn't really want us to do. It wasn't a good use of our time, but by figuring out what they needed and wanted and how they could support us for maximizing resources, and really seeing that make a difference. And that last bullet point about the understanding of PASS and PATH and the way those two programs can support students that we need back in school, has really made a difference, in our numbers. One of the things that came out of that last board meeting was the partnership for the attendance engagement specialist. Madeline worked for us for 1.5 years. She was stationed out of she was actually working out of the FRC, spending time in both middle schools. We intentionally placed her at the middle schools, knowing that the most important thing we could do is get kids back on track before they got to the high school, because once they get to the high school, the challenges just multiply. And so making sure that they were ready to make that transition was key. This year, when she started in year 2, we actually had her working with those students who were in the high school to make sure that they stayed on track and we didn't abandon them. And we've put some things in place to try to make sure those students continue to feel supported in her absence. Talking a little bit about what Madeline did and the process that we had. It was really about, identifying who were the chronically absent. I mean, we talk about deep end services and trying to avoid deep end services. She was really working with the students who were one step away from that. And she spent a lot of time in homes, in the community, meeting people wherever they wherever they were comfortable being met, and doing anything she could to build a relationship, provide resources, and see what she could do to get students back in school. It was fun to meet with her and listen to the things that she was doing, because it was a constant case of monitor and adjust. I still remember the kid who lived within the walking boundaries and couldn't walk and couldn't get a ride, so we got her a bike. and next thing you know, this student's biking to school. So it was really unique strategies that only someone who was dedicated in a full-time way could follow up on. And I would add that after we added this position, the state did offer pilot grants to school districts to have positions like this, and I would say that our position was very well built out, and doing the work that you were seeing in Minneapolis and Richfield and a few of the other communities that were able to add these positions through dedicated state funding. A little bit of the work that Madeline did. This was, I believe, last school year. She worked with 22 total students. Her caseload at any one time was around 14 or 15, so there would be students who would come or go. I think that one of the things that we found interesting is when you look at the breakdown of who she was working with, it actually is closer to the demographics of our school than some might have expected. So truancy really doesn't know, it doesn't know gender, it doesn't know race, ethnicity, et cetera. It's just something that really impacts all students, and I know that Nikki is going to talk a little bit more about that.
So in 2021, I think all of us are well aware of the COVID pandemic and how it challenges schools and families. And Scott County had an opportunity to do something a little different in regards to attendance issues. So our PASS and PATH programs were developed. The PASS program is really for children under the age of 12 that are missing school. It's prevention and diversion, so children that miss 3 unexcused absences can be referred directly from the school to get help on why their children might be missing school. And then that diversion part, prior to this year, in July, the statute changed. So now we have to offer a child welfare response to when we get an educational neglect report. Prior to that, Scott County was essentially doing that. So when we received a child protection report, if there was no other issues other than attendance, we would divert that case to St. David's, which is implementing our PASS program. And the PATH program is similar for children over the age of 12. Schools can make direct referrals to the Catalasso group and to Treehouse for any child that's struggling with attendance issues. So with Shakopee schools, our past programs had 36 prevention referrals this year, 8 diversion referrals, and 42 PATH referrals. We have seen over the last few years from 2021 quite a few changes in regards to our referrals. We are getting more prevention referrals and less diversion referrals, and we really attribute that to meeting families earlier on to help sort through some of the issues around. Sometimes parents just don't know they need to call the school, or they don't have phones, or there's language barriers. So really around helping educate families around those attendance issues. So this is just a highlight from St. David's and the work they're doing with families. So separate from this, in March of 2025, the Detroit Peer published some research from the Detroit Partnership for Education, Equity, and Research. And they did 8 years of research, really taking a look at why kids are chronically absent. And what they found is that the absences are really a symptom of a whole bigger risk of issues for families and communities. And our data with St. David's, excuse me, really speaks to that. What we're seeing with families that are missing school is really around parenting, transportation, housing, child well-being, mental health issues. So for us, I think that was really the piece around how are we helping support families and not just being punitive around you're missing school, you're getting detention, those kinds of things. And really the vision around the school programs was how do we reduce the need for involuntary services and reduce disparities. Some of the things we've seen since implementation in 2021 has really been around, in the beginning, we were really seeing a pretty large referral base for our diversion programs for our BIPOC community. And we were seeing prevention referrals for our Caucasian families. And really, I think that was a little bit around language barriers, some other issues that were making it difficult for families to call in to being excused. And what we've really looked at doing is how do we increase that relationship between families and schools, support mandated reporting, how do we help schools help families, improve outcomes now and into the future, and then that community approach, how do we help families get connected to community organizations. So next steps, and I think really the work we've done with Shakopee schools over the last couple of years has really been around some of the
the cleaning up of the absences. How do families get excused? How do families get unexcused? And then really just going that widespread of making sure that families and individuals know how important attending school is. A next step for the county is this year, just a little over a week ago, we released a request for proposal for community organizations regarding our PASS and PATH programs, really taking a look at evaluating those programs over the last few years. What might we need to change? What do we want to keep the same? And then hearing for communities about what their ideas might be to approach this. Any questions?
I just have one. What is our goal now? I mean, since we don't have our attendance specialists, what are we striving for number-wise?
By number-wise, do you mean in student attendance?
Right, correct.
I think, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I think what we're striving for is continued incremental growth. I mean, we're seeing regular growth of attendance of 2 to 3% a year right now. We're starting to get back to some of the pre-COVID numbers. I think we still run into some of the challenges that we've highlighted in the past, which are, parents think with online learning and things like Canvas and Seesaw, I can pull my kid out and go here and go there, and not have it impact their learning. And what we're really trying to do is convince families that know, the best form of learning takes place, in school. So going back to your original question, I mean, it's that continued incremental growth of student attendance, which I think we're seeing at every level right now.
Thank you. So I remember we were in the other room, I think, and I think Madeline was there at that point in time. And that's where the county was funding part of her, not completely, or was it?
It was completely, yes.
Was it? Okay.
Yes.
And so that was one of those hard choices of like, which we're probably gonna get into next with these mandates, which, who brought the Tylenol before we get into that topic? That it was more that than not seeing good results. It was just like, golly.
No, we were seeing really good results. It was not only the work with specific students, but the support she could provide attendance teams, and just, and the support that she could provide families. Yes, she had a regular caseload, but then there were other families that she just would help on an as needed basis from time to time. So, no, it was a very beneficial program, and, unfortunately, we were unable to absorb the cost as well.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on to Connect Therapy.
Good evening, both boards. Thank you for having us. We are going to talk a little bit about the Connect Therapy Program, which is a partnership between the county and the school. But before we do that, we're going to kick over to Brian. I should introduce myself. I'm Julie Fred, the Director of Special Services for Shakopee Schools. You've met Brian, and he's going to say a few comments before we get into some of the other details.
Yeah, personally, from a student perspective, Connect Therapy is so important for students, not only for eliminating that stigma for getting support, but also eliminating that barrier of transportation, which is very, I guess, the main barrier for students when getting support. And then just currently, at any time, therapy is needed for students, whether it be for friends, family, or school, any topic really. This support is very needed from our by our Shakopee students.
Do we do this?
It's just the arrow. I think. Nope, never mind.
Oh, okay, sorry. We actually, I think this is where you're going to step in. We've been working with the county with Connect Therapy for 12 plus years. To be honest, I could not remember the exact time that we started. It was around the time that I took this position. But we've seen over 300 students.
Yeah, so in calendar year 2025. So 2025, we saw 300 individual unique students through the Shakopee program, Connect program, in over 5,250 sessions. Now, I think why that's important is for two reasons, really. One is that now I'm not an educator, but I would imagine it's very difficult to educate students who aren't present in the classroom.
And so by embedding therapists within the school district, within the buildings themselves, we are bringing the people that need, the people that can be there to help the kids out to where the kids are already at. And so it allows them to maintain themselves in the building, in the classroom, to be able to get those services that are really, really important. And then the second reason that I think is really important is decreasing barriers. So we need to decrease the barriers in order to increase the access. And that's really what bringing therapists out into the school districts is all about. So these numbers are great, 300 unique students, that's wonderful. 5,000 plus sessions, that's great. I think what's more important, or equally important, if not more important, is that we're bringing it to where they are so we can continue to allow them to be around their peers, or allow them to be present in the classrooms and around those people who are also going to be additional supports to them, the social workers, the guidance counselors, the paraprofessionals, all those people that can continue to meet those additional needs in addition to providing those therapeutic needs. Go ahead.
So how do they access this program? We have several different ways. Parents can call and say, hey, my student really needs some extra mental health support. Students can say to a teacher, to a counselor, I'm struggling with something. Teachers can also refer students. What I really love about this program is it's a full process and parents are involved the entire way. So students are not able to move forward in the program unless their parents are also completing a parent component. There's a referral, and then they do a full diagnostic to figure out where we start with the student as our counselors or our therapists in the school start to work with them. One thing that wasn't mentioned, but you'll notice 300 students, 500 plus sessions. Another thing I think is key with the way that we're running this with Scott County and the therapists is there's not a prescribed number of you get 12 sessions and then you're done, we're moving on to the next kid. They really work diligently to make sure that if a student is released either to another therapist in the county because that's the time they can do it, or just on their own because they've gained the strategies and the skills, that kid is at a place where they can move forward and take the next steps. Instead of just saying, we have a set number, so maybe we can get to more students, they make sure that the students that they're seeing and that have gone through the diagnostic are really getting what they need before moving on. This really just highlights, and I'm not going to read them to you, who our therapists are and where they're at. Megan Geeson, who is at the end, she is not part of the Connect therapy program, but I feel like it's important to bring her up as well because she is another therapist. She's our chemical health therapist, but she also came from and was hired through the county, and we have her at school to work with our kids who have some chemical health needs. So how do we serve kids in different ways, only individual sessions for the most part during the school year. But one of the things we had to come up with is what do we do over the summer? Because we still have these people employed through the summer, and it did take a couple of summers for us to figure out what to do with this. But we're really doing some cool things now where they are coming together to do some group sessions. Oftentimes, it's in conjunction with either our targeted services summer school program or our special education summer school program, which is ESY, because then they can come, they can be in the buildings, students can go and they can have their therapy session, or they can stay afterward and do some of that group therapy. But like Brian mentioned, transportation can be a barrier, especially in the summer, to getting to some of their sessions. So if we can work with the summer school programs and get kids there on one of those buses, it works out really nicely.
All right, so in addition to providing psychotherapy, our Connect therapists are providing other services as well. So one of the things that's mentioned up on here is the professional development series that we provide and education opportunities that we provide to staff and also to some families as well in some of these cases. So some of the topics over the past year have been on mental health, including self-care and coping skills. That includes both for students as well as staff. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on right now. And one of the things that we have seen kind of post-COVID forward is that the amount of burnout that people are experiencing, including staff. So one of the ways that we've tried to really reach out is to be able to provide support to staff as well as to the students who are there. Addiction in the family and then suicide prevention is one of those things that have to be covered on a regular basis. I don't know in the schools what exactly that is, but it's something that we've been providing more often as well. The other piece that I wanted to say is embedded clinicians also provide the opportunity for real-time access to consultation and collaboration. So when you have students that are kind of coming and going throughout the day, when you have somebody and you have access to somebody and you can step into their office when they've got some availability and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this student right now. Even if we aren't providing direct clinical care to that person, we can still provide consultation. We can still provide some collaboration and say, how do we work together? How do we help this student be more successful, whether they are in our services as a direct client or not? And some of that conversation might be, what services can we provide to this student? In terms of clinical services, but just as importantly is, what's the team that we have that's available to this student? Who are the other people that can reach out to, that we can reach out to and connect with in order to provide the needs that this student has, in order to continue to keep them in the classroom, in order to continue to be able to educate them in their setting. So I think in addition to the education we provide, the therapy that we provide, that consultation and collaboration is really, really important. I did want to say one more thing as well about the timing piece, is that we do provide our services year-round. So when the summer break comes on, even if kids are not able to get into a group or something like that, we continue to provide services both in person, or we'll do telemedicine services if we have to. Telemedicine, I'll be honest, is not my favorite way to work with kids, but it certainly is better than nothing. So we want to continue to, again, break down those barriers and be accessible to the students year-round, and that's a service that we definitely are providing as well.
We're done. Any
All
questions
right.
for us?
Comments? Go ahead.
One quick, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this might be a question for Brian. He's going to put him on the spot, but Julie, feel free to jump in. Does any of this align with the Green Bandana Project and certainly that student-led emotional support among your peers?
Yeah, I think specifically about the Green Bandana Project, I think that's more about unity and how students are supporting students when not necessarily these services are, rather, I guess it's a supplement. It definitely does not replace Connect Therapy, but when students support students, it builds that bond and really helps students not only overcome challenges, but be able to tackle them maybe not on their own, but just being able to resolve that.
Thank you.
I would say, Tim, also that it's all goes hand in hand anytime that we can build skills and strategies or that support network. One thing that we didn't mention, but goes a little bit without saying, is this is a true therapeutic clinical session, and so the confidentiality piece is people shouldn't know, students shouldn't know who is going up and having these therapy sessions unless they choose to disclose that. So all the things go hand in hand, and our therapists really do become part of the school, so kids see them and they recognize them, but they don't always know that that's what they're up there doing.
And that's fair. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
I was just saying, in fact, one of the kind of hallmarks of success to our therapists being, or kind of points of success is when I hear students say, I didn't even know you guys had that here. I mean, it's great in one way, like I want people to know the service is there, but if we're doing so well at kind of blending in and not making it obvious of what kids are doing and what services they're receiving, then that means we're protecting that confidentiality. We're really providing a space where kids can come and get the clinical care that they need.
Jody, did you have something?
Scott County has a mental health advisory council that meets regularly. I think this would be a great presentation to that group. I think they had more interest in some of the services for the younger people, so I would really encourage that we have that. Thank you.
That's already being planned, so, yep.
Thank you. I just have one question. In a perfect world, from a staffing perspective, where are we at with needs that our students have compared to the staff that we have to perform these services to support our students?
We definitely have wait lists in most of the buildings. Part of that comes from what we talked about, not that prescriptive, you get this many sessions and really ensuring that students are getting what they need. Part of it is finding therapists. I know that we've worked over the years with countless, with you, with Tanya, with Terry Raditz, always looking for people to come in. Something I've really appreciated about the people that the county have hired is They're very intentional about, yep, we might have been able to get somebody just to put in a place because we need someone, but we're looking at who has experience with students, what is their track record, all that kind of stuff that sometimes we waited a little longer to get the right person in there. But I would say, Christy, if we're looking at, is there enough to fill all of our need? No, not currently. There's a lot of need right now.
I assume that was probably gonna be the answer.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to dovetail on that. I kind of suspected that as well. I was curious too to kind of curtail both topics in with the loss of Madeline and the truancy issues. And you were talking about maybe trying to find programs and things to do in the summer, that if there's any way to connect with the kids that truly are having the truancy issues in the summers, to maybe try to work on those problems and find a way to maybe fill that void a little bit and use our assets to our best resources.
I know you might want to talk about that a little bit more, because the groups that they do in the summer, they don't necessarily go through the same diagnostic. They can have other groups that are larger, and that might be something.
Yeah, so we can run a variety of different groups. I think when we were talking about school attendance and the difficulty with school attendance, one of the things that was highlighted was mental health. And so a lot of the students that we're working with, and underlying the primary underlying mental health concerns that are going to lead to the school avoidance are going to be anxiety. And anxiety-based, it could be just based on the internal anxiety itself. It could also be based on trauma. Obviously, depression is going to have some of that effect as well. Point of all of this, I could go on for hours about this, I'm sorry. But the point of all this is that when we're able to access those services, whether it be in group, in individual, stuff like that, that's what's, I think, gonna help us be able to tap into, help those students be able to tap into those other resources and make more effective use of them. So I don't know if I'm answering your question necessarily directly, but in terms of the groups, we offer a variety of different groups. Some of them are based on social skill development. Some of them, I think one of them had a curriculum that was based on, what was it, Legos, I think, this year as well, that was well received. And so it's really trying to be able to reach out to the students where they're at, be able to kind of provide that wraparound coverage for the summer, and be able to hopefully help continue to treat those underlying things, so that way they can continue to take advantage of those other resources that are available once the school year starts back up again.
Thank you.
Thank you, chairs. On the topic of need, could you go back to, I think it was slide 99? I just want to understand that math a little bit more and make sure I heard that correctly. So there's the need, and then there's the need that's not getting met. So this program's been in the 12-plus years. And then on B, I heard that reference is like 500, but I see it, it's 5250,
Yep.
right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so it's 300 students, 300 unique students annually.
In the calendar year 2025, yep.
Yeah, and so those 300 are getting this 17 and a half roughly average sessions per time to get to the 5250. So those numbers are, okay, I just want to make sure I heard that right and understood that right. So that's what's getting done, and then there's this whole pile of need. And then I guess last question is, this thing is an amazing tool, but does it also drive some of this?
Without a doubt.
More of it than you want to know.
I know. I knew the answer before I asked it, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're on to now Commissioner Beer's favorite topic, legislative issues, also known as mandates.
So I think there are a few slides, and Jake, I understand that maybe you're going to be talking to some of them, and then I think the school district can probably wrap around some of the other mandate things that we are facing as well, so.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. So what we have on the screen here, and Barb Dahl, our Health and Human Services Director, is welcome to come to the podium if she's inclined to do so. Is a matrix that she put together with her staff, identifying, I think it would even be fair to say this is the tip of the iceberg. This looks like a lot within one division of the county, looking at specific programs. So these are sort of the bigger buckets, and within each of these, there are many, many mandates that do or do not apply. So on the left, prevention intervention services, those are things that our county board has elected to do. We're not mandated to do those things, and we believe those drive the outcomes that we've been looking for. Mandated services in the middle, my understanding is that those are mandates that are put upon the county, but we have some options around how those mandates are fulfilled. We can contract out for some of those services. In the column on the right, the county must do those things. And I'll hand it over to anybody if there's a need to elaborate or is that sufficient for now? I think that's good for now. Okay. So that's a starting point for just one division of the county. Quite a few mandates represented there. The next slide.
So Jake?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Just one thing maybe Barb doesn't want to add, but like the school mental health program that you all liked and we see good results, that's not a mandated program. You don't see that up on there, right? And so that's a program they have started after that, but yet we find it very successful, very helpful, but it's not something that is mandated for the county to do.
And what we don't have depicted on the list additionally is like children's mental health in the bottom right in the mandated column is the extent to which these mandates are fully funded. I don't know, it'd be a small number, underfunded or unfunded completely. Children's mental health is a mandated program that's very prescriptive. This is what we have to do. These are the ratios for caseloads for our staff, and we put hundreds of thousands of dollars in levy into that program, and we received just shy of $34,000 from the state to deliver on those mandates.
Microphone. Just one thing, the children's mental health, that's a case management model. That's different than the schooling mental health services that you receive. So just to make that clarification. But I think, again, it's that prevention piece. We'd put the schooling mental health in the prevention column because we're really hoping that that early intervention prevention piece hopefully keeps kids from moving like into our adult or our child protection, maybe later our adult protection, but child protection services, which is really expensive, really intrusive, and the outcomes just are much harder for the families. So,
Thanks, Laura. The next slide, again, just to help facilitate some discussion between the two boards, in addition to the mandates that we receive from the state government. There are also mandates from the federal government that get passed down to the states, and Minnesota happens to be one of the states that is happy to pass some of those mandates along to counties. So we're impacted by some of those federal cost shifts to the state. Some of those shifts come down to the county. One that you've probably heard about is SNAP. So you have on the screen there multiple examples of how HR 1 that was passed summer of 2025 will impact county finances, county programs, county levy. On the right, you have a graph that was created by the state of Minnesota. This has been in presentations from Office of Management and Budget and Department of Human Services. These are the cost impacts from HR 1. So on the far left, the two columns of about $1.3 billion in lost federal funding getting shifted to the state of Minnesota. That's the total for the next 4 years or so. The first three pairs, automatic general fund costs, other required state costs, lost federal grants, those are the impacts that will hit the state directly, roughly $300 million. They can cover that out of fund balance relatively comfortably, their rainy day fund. If you look at the far right, $980 million over 4 years will shift to other categories, including counties. We don't have $980 million in fund balance across the 87 counties in Minnesota. So in addition to new programs, new under or unfunded mandates, we also have these cost shifts and some really just unprecedented shifts in federal programs being funded with local property tax dollars. So the impacts are huge on us, and I think part of the reason you wanted to have this conversation was to talk about the impacts on everybody we serve and how we can work together to address those and perhaps mitigate them. Is that fair? Leslie, Barb, anything you'd add to that before the boards take over?
I get in trouble on the last time I referenced this slide, but Jake, come on, you got to be, you're being dramatic here, am I right? You're being dramatic on this? Like, these numbers can't possibly, we must have come up with these because we must have come up with these numbers somehow out of our best intentions, but they can't be totally accurate, right? Because we came up with these numbers?
These are the real numbers from the state of Minnesota.
Oh, so this is the state's own numbers.
That's correct.
Which we knew that, I just had a point of emphasis. So that's the state's own data about the costs that are sliding down to 87 counties. Like, this isn't something like, well, we think this is, because we do a really good job of trying to, you know, best guesstimate how we're gonna be impacted, how the collective, we are gonna be impacted. And this is the state's own numbers. It blows me away that it even gets this far. So yeah, where's my blood pressure meds? They're in here someplace. It's crazy. Thank you.
I think this just goes to show that $980 million, the indirect impact that it really has on our students, because we have a lot of students that are likely to probably receive SNAP benefits. That we have students that get Medicaid, and some of those dollars do come and hit our school district as well. But I think it's just good from a school board perspective, for everybody to have an understanding of what's coming and the impacts that it's going to have on our students and their families in our school districts as well as a result of this. And obviously, there's the tax impact too, right? Because as a school district, we're facing a lot of the same challenges as well with mandates. You know, I can say that a couple of concerns that school boards have across the state. One is they have a task force right now looking at special education, and they are looking to cut $250 million out of special education. If that task force cannot come up with a way to cut those dollars, the state will just cut. And we're hoping that we made a lot of progress a few years ago in reducing the cross subsidy or increasing the cross subsidy, however you look at it, for special education. There's a lot of fear that we might go backwards as a result of this, which is, again, a federal program. We are required to offer those services, and the funding may decrease. I think at one point, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at one point we were covering 8 or 9 million out of our general fund towards special education.
That's right.
Is that right?
It was actually it was going to go up to like 11 million, and then it's better, although as time has gone on, some of that has grown back again.
Right. So that's just one example of things that are being worked on right now. I think a couple of things that came out of the state school board legislative assembly or delegate assembly, I guess we call it, is school boards are really asking for, if you're going to give us a mandate, you need to give us enough time to implement it. You can't tell us on May 1 that you're going to have this mandate starting July 1. And the other thing is that everything has to have a fiscal note, because there were a lot of bills that were passed that didn't have fiscal notes. And so those are some of the things on our platform that will be brought forward, as well as we know the unemployment insurance is another mandate that right now it's funded, but it is almost out of money. And so when that money is gone, it will now hit the school district's operating general fund, I guess. And so those are some huge concerns that we have. We know going into this legislative session that it is a bonding year, and more than likely, and we know there isn't money. So we know that there's probably a small chance of things getting done. And at the federal level, while we don't get a ton of funding from the federal government, things are a little bit of a, I guess I'd call it a train wreck right now as well, because every penny counts for every district. And even though we don't get a lot of funding, it's gonna be a significant impact. The unique thing about school districts is that we get a finite amount of money. That's what we have to work with. If we need more, we have to go to the taxpayers. County doesn't have to do that. You can just raise the levy, whatever you need, what you think is reasonable, maybe, to cover some of these things. Obviously, you can't, 980 million, I know that's not Scott County's number, but it's gonna be a big number, and you can't, probably reasonably go out and raise something so high something's gonna have to go, right? I mean, we all have to make those decisions. But it just gets harder for school districts, and we know with in Shakopee, our last operating levy, we are now maxed out with what we can ask for from the community. So now we know it's cuts for moving forward. So I don't know, any board members wanna chime in, Joe, anything from the finance side that you've
it's just, the next few years are gonna be very interesting because, yeah, now that we have tax to the max, it rhymes, wow. It's just gonna be cuts. If we increase costs 5%, or, if costs increase 5% and our levy goes up 2, 3 with the state, I mean, that's 2% every year that is gonna have to be cut from the budget. And we know that just doing the 3 million that we had to do for this year, next year, I should say, it's difficult and it's just going to get more difficult as time goes on.
Right. Dr. Redbend, do you have anything that you'd like to add in regards to the mandates?
No, I thought we were really having a great, positive conversation.
Who put this last?
Yeah.
No, it is, it's a shared reality that we both faced, and that's the part of, people taking time and energy to really try to solve some deep problems like the truancy, and are doing great things, and then, far too often in both of our, I could have kicked it up a notch or two maybe, but far too often with both of our entities, it's almost like the rug gets pulled out under you. You're finding ways to be proactive. You're finding ways to intervene early, and it's working. But then, and that was the thing I think that was really striking when Jake talked, the mandates on that one end, you have no choice. And some of the other things that are actually providing great value, you just simply can't afford. And so I think we've got to, again, there's still great work. I know that your organization, our organization will always do the best we can to serve our community. But this is a reality. This isn't a made-up challenge. And so I appreciate the conversation, and I do think it ties back, unfortunately, to a lot of the great things we were talking about earlier. Those are really good examples of where people are finding efficiency, becoming more productive, and then we face challenges not of our own making that destroy some of that work.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add, when you said require a fiscal note, Barb and I were chatting, we need fiscal note, but it needs to show the state and the local share. So where we get stuck on the fiscal note, and they can probably talk to it better than I can, it's a $1 million project or whatever cost, and that much goes to the state, but the rest of it, they don't figure out how much comes to the counties. And so I think that is part of the fiscal note issue. It only thinks about the state. That whole slide gives you the mentality when Commissioner Beer talked about it. What are we worried about when we go talk to our, when we're talking to the Senate and the House and their committees? We've got this in our fund balance. There's no thought from the state departments or agencies on this is a total shift and push. And so the fiscal note, 100% with you, but it needs to show everybody's cost. That is a critical part of that discussion.
Right.
One quick comment. I guess one thing that we recently had to deal with was getting a levy and knowing what that impact is to the taxpayers for, say, $5 or $7 million. And this is just for you commissioners. I haven't seen this quite laid out like this before, but have you figured out what type of impact that would have on the Scott County taxpayers yet, or is it still a little early in the process for that?
Well, I'll let Barb
Like a
talk,
dollar amount
but
per
I think it's
household?
somewhere pushing, 3 to 4 million in total.
And before Barb talks about those specifics, I would just say about this, and I know this is the same with the school boards on the state level, is we're not just saying, okay, gosh, this is how it's gonna be. We're all working on this, and there has been some efforts already, for example, in more frequent Medicaid eligibility redeterminations, trying to make sure that the most efficient part of government to do that does it, and maybe that's gonna happen at the state. Still taxpayer money, but we're working on this. This is something that's a bit dynamic, and we're all doing that, and I think it's important. We know you guys are doing that, we're doing that. Especially though, we're working federal and state level, but on the state level, this session, there's only so much money at the state level, and it's not a great situation right now. We're adverse to each other on that, so I think it's important for us to know of these situations as we work through these next couple months, as we see each other at the Capitol, as we think about the good of our entire community versus just the good of the county levy, the school levy, the city levy. So that's where I really appreciate these conversations and being able to talk about this, because, you know, a win for the county on, you know, May 20th or whatever at the legislature might be a loss for the school district, which in the end could be a loss for our Scott County taxpayer. So having these conversations and trying to keep each other informed, I think is really, really important.
And I think just to piggyback off of that, Commissioner Brecky and I both serve on what we call the Big Four, which is the school district, or the School Board Association, the counties, the townships, and I'm missing one, cities. We meet 4 times, I think it's 4 times a year, and we do talk about what are these impacts, what is the legislative platform for the School Board Association, what is it for the counties, what is it for the cities, and we try to all work together to understand what each other's impacts are going to be, how can we help each other. And so we do have some really, really good conversations about those sorts of things, but sometimes it still can be challenging, right?
So much money in the bucket.
Right.
I think these actually all come at different times. The first hit for us will come in October of this year, which we have baked into this budget. Worst case scenario, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 million over the course extra that we would have to pay. But I think, as Commissioner Reckner said, I think we're hopeful that we will be successful at some point legislatively and at least trying to mitigate some of these impacts and have the state pick up, or hopefully we'll have some improvements on system modernization and efficiencies across our system.
All right, we're at the end of our agenda. We each need to adjourn our boards, and we'll let the school board go first.
All right. Is there any further discussion or topics from the school board?
I move we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? I just want to say thank you again to everybody that made this happen. It's been 3 years almost, and hopefully it can happen more frequently than 3 years, because I think there are some really, really positive things that are happening, and we need to continue that momentum, and that happens, I think, if we can meet a little bit more frequently than 3 years. So, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Our meeting is adjourned.
Okay, the county board needs a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion? Again, I will also say thanks for everybody's work and collaboration and effort. This is a big amount of topics that we've talked about tonight that you really work on and make progress on. So thank you for all that you're doing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion